Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tips, brought to you by How Lifted Official. Carter back again. You're not even a guest at this point, man. We're back with Doc Nelson.
What's going on, man? Thanks for
So,
having me back.
yeah, dude, glad to have you back on here, man. And we're continuing our series, talking about injuries, common injuries, and ways to fix those, and do's and don'ts, man. But let me turn it over to you, Doc. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, today we're talking about hips and knees. The two of them I don't really think can be separated as far as how to address them, how to understand them. And so we've talked about plantar fasciitis. We talked about shin splints previously. So if you guys have foot or ankle or shin issues, make sure to watch those. We're going to reference back to some of that here, but I want today to be fairly complete. Knee issues are something that affect a lot of people. There's all sorts of things from pain, from grinding, clicking, popping, inability, lack of endurance, lack of feelings of stability that affect not just people who hunt and who lift or lead a more athletic life, but also other folks like regular everyday folks. Drive, go to work, come home, sit down. So what I wanted to do is give you an idea of how I understand knees and hips clinically, and some of the easy things that people can do at home to rehab things, to find out where the problem is and how to think about it. Because that's, I think, more than half the battle. Once you know what the problem is and where the problem is, then you can address it. And there's so many great resources online that you don't have to be able to. Sometimes you don't even have to go to the doctor to fix an issue. Sometimes a pretty severe issue, because there's so much expertise online. But you have to know what the problem is. You have to know where it is and how to think about it. So hopefully, I want to give some of that, and then some tips I would suggest for how to start going about, generally speaking, rehabbing knees and hips at home.
Absolutely, man. Let's jump right into it, man. This is certainly injuries that most people are probably familiar with. Especially I'm getting older now, man. I'm over 30. My knees hurt sometimes. My hips are tight.
Oh no, yeah. Well, so let's talk about that actually. So let's jump right in. The first thing I want to say, which is a little theoretical, it's a little brainy, is that your symptom, the thing that is causing the complaint, is not necessarily the problem. There's a difference between the symptom and the problem. The symptom is the thing that gets your attention. It's the knee pain. But why do you have knee pain? Mm. Then we start asking the right questions. So you want to be like a toddler and keep asking why, as far back until you're satisfied with that answer. Because you don't just wake up one morning and you've been bitten by the knee pain bug in your sleep. It doesn't really work that way.
Right.
So something happened, usually a lot of little somethings, and the symptom, the resulting outrage from your body, is manifested in your knee. That doesn't mean that's where the dysfunction is. That's just where the dysfunction is noticed. And so, as soon as you realize that the location of the pain is not necessarily the location of the problem, you are miles ahead of most people and, sadly, most doctors.
Mm.
So, um, what I want to talk about next is we're going to have an image here for you guys. It's going to be a picture of stability versus mobility in different joints. The whole body can be looked at as a chain. And if you have a joint that's supposed to be stable, or a segment of the body that's supposed to be stable that is not, the ones above and below have to compensate. If you are too stiff, you're not going to be able to move around. Compensations are not as good as the ideal function of that part of the body. But you have to get by. You have to keep living. You have to keep doing, especially as a parent. This is particularly meaningful to me to help parents get their life back, to be able to hold their kids again.
Yep.
Because you have a little one raising their arms up and being like, "Daddy, hold me." I'm like, I can't imagine not holding my children. But I
Yeah.
know parents have to deal with that every single day, and
Yep.
that just freaking sucks. So that's one of the things um, that I love doing for patients the most. And knee pain, hip pain commonly goes with back pain and foot pain. So all of those things are things I address. But so if you take a look at that image there, you'll notice that the low back is supposed to be stable, the hip is supposed to be mobile, and the knees are supposed to be stable. The ankle is supposed to be mobile. Now it's not pictured, but the foot, then the lower foot, like the arches are supposed to be stable. This is why being in a boot for rehab for the ankle is possibly one of the worst things you could do biomechanically to someone. There are exceptions, of course. There are reasons where that would be appropriate, but by and large, I am not a fan. Um, yeah, mm-mm, no. And this is why you see knee braces instead of knee casts.
Right. Right.
You know, but um, yeah, you want your knee stable. If it's not stable, because the hip is too tight, we'll go ahead and cue the next picture, which shows a picture of the knee turned in too far. This is because the hip is not able to open up properly. The adductors are on the inside of the thigh are way the frick too tight. You're going to see where's that pinching on the inside of the knee where that becomes a problem because the what's called the Q angle, how far in the femur is turned inward, is way too much, and that turns into a lot of problems. We talked earlier about how many reps you put on your shoes, how many reps you put on your feet and your knees. I think we determined if you're running at a decent pace, you're putting 1,000,000 reps on your knees and your feet in, we said, about 3 months.
Yep.
I think we did the arithmetic on that. That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yep.
And that's going to become important later for looking at chronic use injuries. So we'll look at the anatomy of the knee later on. But that's going to be important to remember how much volume you put on your knees. And each one of those is tearing it up a little bit. And then one morning you just wake up and it's like the straw broke the camel's back and now your knee hurts like the dickens.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. 100%.
let's see here. Yeah, so the next image I want to throw up, and I want to talk about another idea that we need to dispel, a myth we need to dispel, is that if there's degeneration in your knee already, you're guaranteed to have pain. And that is a myth. That is not true. I've been able to clinically witness this so many times. I've had people with some of the most god awful looking knees, like this x ray we'll throw up here, with bone spurs and like missing cartilage and all sorts of fun stuff. No pain whatsoever. Able to function, able to hike, able to hold kids, grandkids. Um, a little stiff sometimes, but really able to do a lot.
Mm.
Degeneration is a sign of previous problems. It's not the sign of current problems.
Right.
Inflammation right now causes pain. Inflammation and tightness and chronic issues in the past leads to degeneration, which we can see now. And so what happens is when someone goes to the doctor and they ask the doctor about their knee and the doctor says, let's take an x-ray. And then the x-ray comes back and they see it and it doesn't look like the textbook. It looks dirty. It looks gnarly. It's got all these spurs and stuff. They go, ugh, and they
Yeah.
panic a little
Right.
bit on the inside of their mind. And then they think, my knee's effed up. Structurally, yeah, a little bit, going to be honest. But that's not the cause of the pain. So there's a logical fallacy here called satisfaction of search, where the first abnormal thing you find, you assign the symptom to or the cause of the problem. Not true.
Yeah.
You could have degeneration because maybe you've been in the military for years. Carrie could probably speak to this. If we had X-rays of that man's knees, that would be a blast.
Yeah.
But that's not that's not the thing that bothers him the most, even though they're pretty beat up. So, that's something to really keep in mind there. It's not necessarily the limiting factor. If you have a chronically torn, like just a little at a time, adductor on the inside of your knee, you're going to end up with swelling on the inside of that knee. It has nothing to do with the degeneration. It has everything to do with the fact that adductor is way too tight. And so every step you take, and every move you make, just to quote the song, right? That knee tears a little bit more, that muscle tears a little bit more, and it's
Yeah.
not messing up the bone. It's the fact that it was left tight for so long, that it was left turned in, and that the hip wasn't mobile enough to actually set that knee angle correctly. That's what caused it a little at a time. So
Now,
we have
you've
to
mentioned,
dispel that myth. Yeah.
yeah. Now you've mentioned in our previous episodes about how resilient the body is and how good at
Yes.
adapting it is, right? And that's one thing I really like hearing from a medical professional, not just treating a symptom and moving on. When there is degeneration, can your body regenerate?
Cartilage, yes. A
Yeah.
bone, yes. It's not likely to change the shape of it long term. Very, very, very unlikely for the bone spurs to completely go away. If they're on the softer side, sometimes the bone spurs can be resolved by taking a high dose of enzymes,
Hmm.
but that's not something I would bank on. Your body can adapt to and compensate for an enormous number of things and still function really, really well. So, to your point, the body experiences pain at about 50% function. 50,
50%.
50. You
That's
can
huge.
lose 50% of function.
Wow.
It might vary by about 10% up or down.
Yeah.
Um, but you can lose 40 to 50% of function before you experience pain. So if you have
Wow.
pain in your knees,
Wow.
there's a lot you can do to increase the knee function and get out of pain. If you're operating at 70%, you might not be able to do as much as, some 18, 19-year-old who's still got all the cartilage in their knees, depending on how stupid they lift in high school. That's a different question.
Yeah.
But, let's say 14 or 15-year-olds, they still probably have all the cartilage in their knees. Um, you might not have as much shock absorption. They might get a little achier after a long day of hiking. But those are things you can offset through diet and lifestyle and other things, which if the kid's eating candy, you're doing better than he is.
Yep.
And you have to understand what is the cause of the pain. It's primarily inflammation and swelling and sensitization of the nerves. That's what's causing the pain. So we're going to cue up a picture of a watermelon here, and I want you to think about trying to nourish and regenerate a joint that is squeezed like that watermelon is. You're not going to get, like, your blood pressure is going to be sufficient to circulate the blood everywhere else except there. Your lymphatics aren't going to flow through there. They're going to flow around it, which means it's not going to be detoxified, which means it's going to be toxic, which means that the blood vessels contract even further and the healing process doesn't take place. And it creates an environment in which you're going to end up with opportunistic infections, low level, low grade sort of infections where the bacteria can migrate from your gut or other areas or from scratches and cuts and end up infecting the joint at a low, low level. Not good. A lot
Yeah.
of rheumatic joints are actually, when they aspirate them, when they pull out the joint fluid and they culture it, they find bacteria in it, particularly staph and strep,
Ooh.
nasty little boogers.
Yeah.
And those, of course, lead to more inflammation, more sensitization, more swelling, more pain, and then long term, more degeneration. So, all that to say, if the joint is too tight, you're not going to be able to get the blood flow there. You're not going to get the nutrients there. You're not going to detox it. You're not going to be able to regenerate it. You can regenerate cartilage, but you have to have space.
Hmm.
You're not going to be able to cram nutrients in there appropriately without hurting the rest of the body from the overpressure that would be required to do that. And
Right.
this is where we get into the importance of stretching and making sure that the joint you want to heal has the room to breathe. So what we'll cue next are the couple of pictures here. We'll show them for a couple seconds each. I don't want you to pay attention to too many of the details here for the structure and the anatomy of the hip joint and the knee and the low back. I want you to see how far up those muscles go into your low back. They connect to the bottom of your ribs. The psoas even connects into your diaphragm. So if you want to talk about hunting, if you want to talk about running, you want to talk about moving, if your hip flexors are too tight, the muscles that lift your knee towards your nose on the front side, if they're too tight, you'll be short of breath
That's
because it won't
fascinating.
allow your diaphragm to move properly. You
Wow.
can't breathe properly. It'll rotate your pelvis forward, and this will become very important later when we talk about how to rehab things and why that's important. The muscles on the front of your pelvis, they'll rotate your pelvis forward and they'll jam up your spine in the back, and it'll hurt a lot. It'll
Hmm.
cause a lot of back pain. That jamming up of your back will then inflame the nerve roots that come out of your back, which run the muscles in your legs,
Right.
which tighten your hip flexors, which rotate your pelvis forward, which jam up the joints, and so it just like loops on itself. And so you can't look at the hip without looking at the knee and the low back. You can't look at the knee without looking at the hip and the ankle. You have to make sure the part above and below are functioning properly. And if you have a knee problem, almost for sure, your low back, your hip, and your ankle are involved. Almost for sure. And so you want to go back to loop back to that first picture that we showed in the first couple minutes there and making sure that the joints are moving properly, that your low back is stable, that your hips are mobile, your knees are stable, your ankles are mobile, and your feet are stable. So that's, let me take a pause there. Do you have any questions to clarify there?
No, man, it's all connected. I feel like I'm in school right now. The diaphragm is wild that it's
Yeah,
connected. That's
yeah.
crazy. That's
If
everybody needs to
if
know that.
anybody here is in an anatomy class, long shot. But if you are, that's a test question on a lot of exams I've seen. The only muscle to insert into another muscle is this iliopsoas muscle. It
That's
goes
fun.
up and it inserts into your diaphragm.
Very cool.
Yeah, if your hips are too tight, you can't breathe, or
It's a
you can
problem.
breathe less. Yeah, yeah.
That's a huge problem.
And especially if you're at altitude. Like a lot of people want to go up, they want to hunt at higher altitudes. Like, I mean, 3,000, 4,000 feet. Like I went to school in Lubbock, you could feel the air already starting to thin out at 3 to 4.
Mhm.
And if you, maybe you're not in the greatest health right now, maybe your cardio is not really up to par. I need you to remember that half of the Earth's atmosphere is at below 18,000 feet. Below 12, like above 12, the pilots who fly have to be on oxygen. The passengers have to be on oxygen at 15. They're going to start turning blue between 12 and 15. It's really sort of funny if you have a dark sense of humor. Um, which a lot of us in the group I think do. We have and if a lot of people are honest with themselves, they do too.
That
So
checks out.
yeah, it really does. Um, so by the time you get to like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, Denver's at 5, and then you got the mountains up above that, you're missing 25% of the atmosphere easily. By the time you get up to 5,000 feet, you're running at 75%, and then your diaphragm doesn't work. Down at
Right.
sea level, that's not that big of a problem. But you start getting up there, and you start tacking on the little things, they start adding up in a big way. And
Yeah.
then if you can't oxygenate properly, you can't relax your muscles. Muscles are stored loaded, as it were. So you'll never meet someone who's exhausted with loose and relaxed and perfectly happy muscles. They're
Right.
always tight. So there's a breathing problem. There's an oxygenation problem. Either you're not cooling down properly or something else like that, or you're not stretching, or you're not breathing deeply into your belly, which if you're not diaphragmatically breathing, because your hip flexors are tied to your diaphragm and
Yeah.
it just
I
winds
see
up.
it.
It really, really winds up. So people ask me sometimes, like, if you could wish one thing for the world, what would it be? And I tell them it's hip flexibility. It's like, what? Okay, break it down. First off, so much less back pain, so much less knee pain. Um, People would have a better time in bed, which would make them feel better about themselves. Um, and if the rulers of the world were better in bed, I think they would not be running around with a chip on their shoulders all the time. They'd be
Right.
much more self confident, much less defensive about things, and there would be a lot more world peace just like that.
Quick fix.
Quick fix, hip mobility for the world. There you go.
Right.
It would improve so many lives. It'd be just amazing. Um, so, um, yeah, let's talk about that. So, as far as if you have these problems, I am a chiropractor. I love adjusting extremities as well. I specialize in neck and shoulder problems, particularly, but I do help a lot with low back problems, hip problems. The hip is like a shoulder that's just flipped and turned around the other way. There's a little bit of additional complexity to it, but it's just slightly different than the shoulder. Basically, shoulder, hip, analogs. Elbow and knee are pretty much pretty simple. Um, so going back to that idea, we want a knee that's stable, and we want a knee that's able to track appropriately. So the biggest thing that happens to keep the knee from tracking appropriately are the adductors are too tight or the glutes are too weak. If the glutes are too weak, you won't be able to extend the knee behind you properly, and you won't be able to keep the knee from folding in. You ever seen somebody at the gym squatting and they get down to the bottom and their knees are tracking out like this and they go down, 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 and those knees go whoop like this?
Yeah. Makes me nervous every time. Yeah.
Yep, yep. So for those of you watching, if your knees do that, your glutes are too weak or your adductors are too tight or both.
Yeah.
Because you're entitled to as many problems as you damn well please. Just because the form at the doctor's office says 3 complaints doesn't mean you're limited to 3 complaints in real life.
That's right.
So stretch your adductors. A Cossack squat is actually really, really good way to stretch your adductors. So for those of you not aware, I think we'll just insert a picture here of a Cossack squat where somebody's leaning off to one side and that
Okay.
the one leg is straight. So I'll send you a picture for that. It's one of my favorite ways to stretch my adductors. Next, glutes, glute bridges. single leg glute bridges. Um, you can do donkey kicks. You can do anything where you're really particularly trying to hold your core steady and push that knee behind you, and you have to engage your glutes. Those are fantastic for knee stability because you're demanding your hip move, and you're creating the strength in the hip to keep the knee from folding inward, which hurts it.
Hmm.
Um, Stretch your quads, stretch your psoas, and we already said the adductors. But on the front side, you want to make sure that the knee can actually extend behind you. So your psoas and your quads need to be stretched by far. And let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, strengthen your abs.
Hmm.
Because when we were talking earlier about that pelvis being rotated forward,
Right.
your rectus abdominis connects from your ribs to your pubic bone in front. And if your abs are weak, it allows that pelvis to rotate forward. And is the most front side attachment of everything. So this is one of the reasons why people say, I had back pain, I strengthened my core, I don't have back pain anymore.
Right.
That's because when their abs were stronger, it kept that pelvis from rotating forward, jamming up the spine in the back and causing all of that pain in the back and irritating the nerves and all of those problems. So there's way more to core stability and core rehab than just crunches or my one of my favorite machines at the gym is like the weighted crunch machine where you have a strap over your shoulder and you hook your legs in and you just like do like crunches like this. I love that thing. Um, be responsible with it, listen to your body, but most people have weak abs, and as a result, their pelvis rotates forward, and as a result of that, they have low back pain, hip inflammation, um, nerve root inflammation coming off their low back, and then the muscles in their legs don't fire correctly, and it turns into this whole slew of other problems. So, to recap, what I would do at home if you have knee problems, stretch your adductors, stretch your quads, stretch your psoas, strengthen your glutes, strengthen your abs, and of course, get adjusted. If you
Yep.
have some issues in your back where things are not moving properly, there's already more inflammation than your body can overcome by itself. A chiropractor can help you get those joints moving properly so they quit inflaming themselves, pissing off the nerve, tightening the muscles, locking up the joint, pissing off the nerve, tightening the muscle, locking up the joint. You get the idea. So a
Yep.
chiropractor can help break those negative cycles. In my office, we break them at each step. I do the myofascial work. We provide laser therapy, and then the adjustments. So we hit muscle, nerve, and bone. Get those all working together in harmony, and get some good results there. I have other great colleagues all over the nation, and if anybody watching needs a referral, they're not in the DFW area, just reach out to my office. I'll help you find a good office for you.
Fantastic. What a plug, man. That's amazing. That's what we're looking for, dude. Just trying to help people, man, and that's something I appreciate about what you
Absolutely,
do.
absolutely,
And
and I think it's ridiculous that you know some folks are like, no, you only need to work with me. It's like, no, no, no. I'm not the right person for everybody. Shoot, I can't see everybody in this town. Not
right,
even the town I live in. There are 50,000 people in this town. I can't see them all. I
right,
have to have a teamwork approach to this. And
yeah,
so, like, yeah, hit me up, shoot me an email. We'll put it in the description below. You can either call, text, email, and ask for a place to go, and we'll help you find a good office to go to.
fantastic, man. That's all phenomenal information, and that should be ringing a lot of bells with folks, man. Those are very common um, injuries and annoyances that people experience, and I like how you're laying it out. You got to backtrack and follow it up the body to where those issues are beginning.
Yep,
It's not just, hey, my
yep,
knee hurts. It's like, all right, let's look
yep,
at the bigger picture here, and then what can
absolutely.
I do in the meantime to solve or remedy those issues, like
Mhm.
strengthening your core. The majority of this country, I'm sure, has an overly weak core and
Yep,
glutes, right? Glutes too,
yep,
right?
yep. And it's a funny thing because, like, the glutes are the primary muscle that move you forward. And so if you're feeling stuck in life, it's because your ass is not powerful enough.
Right.
It's a reason we say move your butt. Well, there's a reason we say get your ass in gear. There's a
Yeah.
reason, like, all of these figures of speech exist very accurately for a reason.
Right.
And if you don't have an ass, like, that's not a good thing.
Yep.
It's a bad thing. Why? Because it means you're stuck. It means you don't have the power to move forward. Um, and if it's too tight, we talk down to people whose butts are too tight. They're uptight, like they've got a stick up their butt. Like, all
Yeah.
again, crass a little bit, but these figures of speech exist for a reason. And it just speaks to how powerful and how important it is for your quality of life, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. It is for you to have a good butt.
Yep.
So,
Gotta have it.
one last thing. If you need trigger points, if you need trigger points removed, get a lacrosse ball. There's a free video training on my channel. We'll go ahead and link it down below. I'll send that to you as well. We'll link that down below. It's about 7 minutes, and it shows you how to use a lacrosse ball to release trigger points. And that's something in your low back and your hip that you can do very easily.
Fantastic. That's awesome, man. I might go do some glute bridges and stretch a little bit before this elk hunt on Monday. I don't want to be on the mountain tight, especially traveling, man. Travel crushes, right?
Yep.
Like
definitely sitting. We get a lot of us. We get to work, we sit. We get up, we get in the car, we sit. We go home, we sit down at dinner. We get up, we sit on the couch. We get up, and then we lay down on the bed. And that's the first time we're actually extended for a little while. And then we wake up in the morning, and we're like, why is everything tight? It's because you were sitting for 14 to 16 hours earlier, and then you laid out for 8, and it's the first time your knees have been that far from your nose, just like extended out.
Yep.
Come on.
So,
come on now. All right. Hopefully this has been a good time for you guys watching. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to the Hunt Lift Eat channel. Love you guys. And leave in the comments the next thing you want us to tackle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep it coming. Let us know what we want to discuss on the next one. Doc, appreciate your time, man. Listeners, as always, appreciate the hell out of you guys. And we'll talk to you next week.